anger, energy and idealism. But on its own, is it changing anything? Are the greedy bankers and their puppet politicians changing their ways in response to it? Are they even listening? Protests of this kind have, undeniably, brought about positive changes in the past. But effecting that change has always been a long and hard process. But what if all that anger, energy and idealism could be channeled into an entirely new and revolutionary form of protest that can bring about all the changes we want and do so more quickly than we could ever have believed possible? Something has happened in the last few years that can now make that dream a reality. Because of what has happened, we the people are now in a position to begin the dismantling of the corrupt and tyrannical banking system and to call time on the bankers and their puppet politicians who have caused so much chaos and suffering in the world with their greed, their lies, their authoritarian laws, their illegal wars and so much more. And yet, surprisingly, the sheer enormity of this golden opportunity we have been presented with has escaped many of us. This development is truly earth-shattering in respect of how much power it gives us to finally break the tyranny of the global banks and increasingly authoritarian and totalitarian governments, such as those in much of Western Europe and North America. Yes, we in the West are now less free overall than people in most other parts of the world. So how was that allowed to happen? In days gone by, totalitarianism was always something the West stood firmly against. Yet as Edward Snowden's revelations have shown, the West is now the most totalitarian part of this world. So where has our freedom gone, and how did it happen? In this video, we will answer those questions. We will also show just how far the global bankers who control Western governments intend to go with their ultimate totalitarian goals. And we will show how this new power we have can put a stop to it all. Yet surprisingly few of us even seem to have noticed this new power. But here is someone who has noticed it.
Bitcoin is the currency of the resistance. Bitcoin is the currency of the resistance.
The currency of the resistance. So how can a currency spearhead a people's resistance? By being totally independent of banks and governments. And that is what Bitcoin is. Take away your government's control of your money and that will stop them taking away your civil liberties. A currency that bypasses the greedy bankers will weaken those bankers and eventually rid us of them. And that will mean fairness and greater prosperity for everyone, not just the bankers and their puppets, as things are at the moment. No more illegal wars based on lies, because, make no mistake, the bankers are the ones behind those wars. They buy corrupt politicians to do their dirty work for them, but the bankers are the ones pulling the strings of those lying politicians. But how do we get these war criminals before a court to face trial for what they did? And why has that not happened yet? It certainly isn't a problem of a lack of evidence. There is evidence of war crimes in abundance. And in Blair's case, the real background to his sudden huge wealth is now becoming very clear. If Blair had been a Serb or a Rwandan, he would have been in the dock long ago. The reason is that powerful people in key positions are blocking justice. And they will continue to do so for as long as they have that power. not just out of loyalty to Tony Blair, but as an act of self-preservation. If he goes down, they go down. Not only for their part in the illegal wars, but for the blatant theft of massive sums of public money.
You might be interested to know that there are 26 members of the Czech Republic Parliament in custody at the moment for crimes of a less serious character than what went on in Ireland 5 years ago. 5 years ago, the banking crime of the century, the theft of billions from men, women and children in this country, and nothing has been done. And the Taoiseach told us yesterday, takes time. We're preparing a book of evidence. The exact same line that was given 2 years after the crisis. It's utter nonsense. What other crime would be treated in this way? Where is the fraud squad? Where is the Criminal Assets Bureau? This is what they were set up for. Any other crime scene would have been surrounded and the evidence taken. It was 6 months before they made a visit to Anglo, 2 years before they even got the passwords. And the reason why it's different is that there's a different attitude to crimes committed by people in suits. They're not considered to be real crimes. Also, of course, a fear that if they had gone in, it might have revealed a connection to the political establishment.
And that is happening all over the Western world. The bankers control the governments and law enforcement agencies. That is why they are never brought to justice for their crimes. The only way to bring an end to this nightmare is to break the power of the banks. And the only way to do that is to inform people that there is now an alternative, a vastly superior alternative, an alternative that gives people their freedom back, an alternative that provides a secure means of storing hard-earned money, safe from government seizure and theft by the greedy banking gangsters. An alternative that will ultimately clean up politics and enable us to put the criminals in jail where they belong and bring real fairness to our world. That alternative is Bitcoin. As Bitcoin grows, the banks will start to shrink, and as they do so, the power of the global bankers will erode, not only in respect of their ability to control and steal our money, but also their power to control politicians and law enforcers through bribery and blackmail. The result will be not only greater prosperity for the people, but also the end of the age of impunity for the bankers and those under their protection, such as Tony Blair. So how do we make Bitcoin grow? Some might say that it is already growing at a rapid pace, and they would be right, up to a point. The truth is that it is growing on the internet. But what about off the internet? What about the high street? What about the real world? That is where real substantial growth must come from to elevate Bitcoin into the mainstream. And the reality is that only a small handful of offline businesses are currently accepting Bitcoin payments, and most consumers have still never even heard of Bitcoin. That is what Bitcoin Soldiers aims to put right. We aim to take Bitcoin onto the high streets all over the world to persuade businesses to start accepting Bitcoin payments and to introduce Bitcoin to ordinary consumers. Very soon you will be seeing Bitcoin Soldiers standing outside banks handing out leaflets like this one. You might even receive one through your letterbox at home. This is the only way to ensure Bitcoin's long-term survival and growth. If we sit back waiting for it to happen on its own, not only will it not happen, but we will soon be witnessing Bitcoin's decline. It won't be a natural decline, but a deliberately engineered one. The banks and their political puppets have already begun their attempts at removing this serious threat to their profits and power. Banks are closing the accounts of Bitcoin exchanges. PayPal is closing the accounts of customers found to be selling Bitcoins on eBay. The United States authorities are seizing the funds of companies involved in trading Bitcoins and threatening them with even more severe consequences. And this is only the start. At this moment, they are planning the next stages of their campaign to destroy Bitcoin by forcing it underground and depriving it of the oxygen of accessibility. This is not because of any genuine concern about money laundering, drugs, terrorism, or any of the other usual pretexts routinely spewed out by the bankers and their puppets. It is because the criminal banking elite and their political henchmen know that the success of Bitcoin will bring an end not only to their tyrannical reign, but also to their sinister totalitarian goals, such as this one.
This is Aaron Russo, a filmmaker and former politician. To his left is Nicholas Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller banking and business dynasty. After maintaining a close friendship with Nicholas Rockefeller, Aaron eventually ended the relationship, appalled by what he had learned about the Rockefellers and their ambitions.
Now, I would say to him, what are you doing this for? What's the point of this thing? You have all the money in the world you ever want. You have all the power. I said, you're hurting people. It's not a good thing. And he would say, what do you care about the people for? Take care of yourself and you take care of your family. And then I said to him, what are the ultimate goals here? He said, the ultimate goal is to get everybody in this world chipped with the RFID chip, and have all money be on those chips and everything on those chips. And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off their chip.
That's right, microchipped.
This RFID chip plan is no longer just some tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. Aaron Russo, a totally credible figure, would have had no reason to make up something like that. And Nicholas Rockefeller has remained totally silent since that interview with Russo. No sign of any lawsuit, not even a single word of denial from Rockefeller. Traditional protest alone will not stop that abominable plan. Those behind it don't fear placards or chanting or even violence. They can deal with that. What they can't deal with is massive public use of and enthusiasm for an alternative currency that they cannot control. They can't deal with Bitcoin once it becomes too big to destroy. But we're not there yet. We are in a race against time to make Bitcoin too big to destroy. And achieving that means promoting Bitcoin out on the streets. Think of every new Bitcoin user as a recruit to the resistance. They don't even have to consider themselves in that way, or do anything other than merely use Bitcoin to add strength to this cause. That's why this form of protest is so much easier and more powerful than traditional protest. We don't have to convince anyone of anything other than that using Bitcoin will immediately make their lives easier, better, and more secure. That is a very easy sell. Much easier than asking people to suddenly become political revolutionaries marching through the streets.